I'm not giving up, I'm not giving up, no, not me. Even if nobody else believes, I'm not going down that easily. So don't give up on me.
Hey everyone, are you rad for Christ? You fired up for Jesus? Welcome back to another episode of Radical Christianity, the talk show that highlights God in action. I am Drew, your host, and I'm so glad that you are here. Well, it looks like one Pennsylvania pastor is counting his blessings after he was spared a bullet while delivering a sermon. Yeah, that's right. He was nearly shot at point-blank range, and it was all captured on the church's live stream. Pastor Glenn Germany was sharing from the pulpit with a small congregation when a man suddenly walked up holding a gun, aimed it, and fired. In what can only be described as an act of God, the gun jammed, which allowed a church deacon filming the sermon to subdue the gunman and wrestle the gun away until police arrived. As someone who does audio and visual at my church, can I just say we are clearly committed to teamwork, and we can do it all. Audio, visual, bodyguard, well done, deacon. Wow, can you imagine showing up to a small hometown church for the sermon and snacks and leaving in a daze like you had just been playing Call of Duty in real life? Apparently, the gunman heard voices telling him to shoot the pastor. Meanwhile, the gun must have heard God saying, "Not today, Satan." In an unexpected move, before being taken away, the gunman reportedly apologized, and the would-be victim, Pastor Germany, said he had already forgiven him. Forgiveness. Wonder where he learned that from. Maybe we shouldn't be too surprised. What I found rather ironic, though, is that the gunman's name was Bernard J. Polite. I think we can all agree there's nothing polite about trying to shoot anyone, let alone a minister in church. But hey, at least he apologized. That's rather polite, isn't it? But apparently he wasn't too polite, because in his home, police actually discovered a relative of his who had sadly been gunned down. Yikes. The pastor literally dodged a bullet that Sunday and was saved by the hand of God. According to the pastor, he pulled the gun, it clicked, you heard him shoot it, God jammed the gun so the bullet didn't come out. I guess we know who's calling the shots on this situation, right? Can I get an amen? All right, everyone, time to get on with the show. Now, tell me, are you rad for Christ? You fired up for Jesus? All right. Ladies and gentlemen, this next guest has got a huge heart for Jesus and a willingness to serve. So let's have a huge, warm welcome for Beth Hinderaker.
Hey, how are you?
Nice. Please have a seat.
Thank you.
Beth!
Yes.
Welcome to Radical Christianity.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for coming. So you have a little soap business, and it's kind of its own little ministry, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, and that's really awesome. Before we get into that, the way we do things here on the show is we go from testimony to ministry or mission.
Okay.
So please share with us how you met Jesus.
Oh, I met Jesus through my beloved husband. So I met my husband when I was a scrappy little 19-year-old college junior and a theater arts major. And he thought I looked like a fun date. And so we arranged a group date so I could meet him, a kind of blind date on my end. And there was just something about him. Wasn't sure what it was. And I'd been searching all my life that there was something missing, but I didn't know what. And, he was tightening up his walk with the Lord, and I was very attracted to that. And after we got married, we were looking for a church together. And we settled in Long Beach, California, and found Hope Chapel, Long Beach. And that's where we both met Jesus face to face. And it was very clear, like the donut hole that had been missing for me, right? And I just knew. And so we were baptized together in our friend's pool, which was as special as my wedding ceremony, honestly. And we just dove in head first to serve the Lord from there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So what kind of, before the soap business, what kind of serving have you been doing?
You know, I have a theater arts and dance major, and directing, producing all in college, and so I worked in Hollywood in the television and film industry for a number of years, and by the time I had my third child, it was just too difficult. I didn't want my children raised in a green room. I wanted to be a hands-on mom, so I took all of those abilities and I poured them into the children's ministry at church. So I wrote, produced, directed all of the children's shows for 30 plus years. Loved it, loved giving that talent back. While I anchored the local cable television news station, which just kind of kept my fingers in it and loved it. And then along the way, I was an entrepreneur so that I could be a stay-at-home mom and be there for my kids, be that Christian mom that I wanted to be. I didn't want to leave to go to work and come back. Not that I'm dissing that in any way, but I knew what God was calling me to do. So I'd always been entrepreneurial. And so, but for me, Christ was always the heart of every business. Christ had to be shared. There had to be something in my business that would point you to Christ. And so I had a jewelry design business called Heavenly Gems for many years. Loved that. And then our kids grew and flew, right? They become adults and go their own way. They all left. Some left the state. Some moved further away, and we wanted to be near one of our children. So just before the pandemic, we moved here to be near my older daughter and her husband. And then the pandemic shut us inside for 2 years.
Yeah.
And so I had always been making organic products. I'd always made them for my family for years because my family all needed very pure products. So I started making soap and sending it as gifts to friends. Mm-hmm. And it just kind of gained a traction of its own, and it became a business very quickly. But I knew I wanted to support a ministry with my business that focused on women and children. So a good portion of my profits support an organization called She Is Safe that rescues women and children from sex trafficking, provides them a safe place to live, the love of Jesus, literacy, and job skills. So I tell people, when you wash with my soaps or burn my candles, you're washing away evil, literally. Yeah.
That's awesome. So the program that you support, it's called
She Is Safe.
She Is Safe. I haven't heard of that one.
It's based out of Tennessee.
Okay, that's probably why.
And it's been around a long time. They rescue women and children all over the world, even locally here. And I was introduced to it by a dear sister in Christ who has supported them for a good 15 years. And I was looking for an organization that did that to support, but I wanted a warm introduction. I wanted to know someone who'd been involved with one for a good long time. I didn't want to just choose. And so I was considering a number of them, and I just kept getting drawn back. And the words "She Is Safe" just had a pull that I couldn't deny. Mm-hmm. And so it literally, their website is sheissafe.org. Very simple. And I'm just getting ready to put up a page on my website for my soap that links you directly to them, so people can go direct there and learn about them. But it's a beautiful organization.
Okay. Now, how long has the soap business been going?
3 years.
3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's basically what they say is the probationary period for a business, right?
Yes. Yep. I love it. I love what I do. I love creating pure, nourishing product. Outside of the soap, I specialize in immune health. And I always teach you have to take care of what you consume and what you put on and in your body. And so this is just a natural extension of who I am. I create, my soap is all food grade. It's that pure.
So do they only get it online, or is it in some stores?
No, I will wholesale to stores. They can buy online. I have an in-home studio that I arrange private appointments, and I'll hold open houses every couple of months within my home studio space as well. Yeah. Well,
that's cool.
Yeah.
It smells good. I can smell it from here.
You can touch, smell any of it. I always tell people, that's my chamomile bar. That's my chamomile bar. And in order to make one loaf, which makes 10 bars, I have to harvest probably five 10-gallon buckets of chamomile buds to just have the buds to then dry and tincture the oil. So I grow all the botanicals.
Really?
I grow all the organic botanicals that I infuse into the oils and butters I use in these soaps. So I control everything from seed to seal. Yeah,
well,
with the purity.
That's seed to seal. That's a new term I haven't heard.
Yep.
I've heard farm to table.
Yeah, seed to seal.
Seed to seal. What's this one?
That one is called Wild Purple Sage.
Wild Purple Sage.
And my motto is life is short, use the pretty soap. A lot of people say, oh, it's too pretty to use. I'm like, treat yourself, use what's pretty and nourishing. Yeah. And then I just launched my men's line, which is the Man Puck. It's the boxes, because the husbands were taking their wife's soap and using it and saying, can't she make something that looks masculine? And one of my friends plays hockey, and he asked me, would you make a bar that looks like a hockey puck? And so the word man puck was kind of a play on words, and it came from there. So I have 5 different soaps in that line as the beginning, and I just finished the design on the boxes and finished the landing page that's just for men. So that was a big learning curve for me in marketing.
Yeah.
But fun, yeah.
What, to single out guys is a learning curve?
Yep. Well, learning all the marketing. Like I designed that box, and it was designed to exactly fit each bar of soap.
Oh, I got you.
All of it, the logo, all of it. Yeah. So that was really interesting.
Yeah, that.
You kind of have to be all things in a business now as an entrepreneur.
I'm very aware of that. I've been running my own business for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's you do have to. Yeah,
you have to wear all the hats.
All of them, because even if you have people helping you, you still have to be able to pick up the slack.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So this is a candle?
Yes, all of my candles are organic, soy-based.
It's really pretty. I've never seen a candle start out like
Thank
a
you.
flower.
It took me a month to teach myself how to pour that rose so it was two-toned.
It's poured like that?
Yes.
It's not...
I poured it to look two-toned. Yeah.
Wow.
I have molds that I use, and I do design some of my own molds, but I fell in love with that mold. And when that dish, there'll be over 45 hours of burn time in that one candle. And when it's done, all that's left is the wick. There's no smoke. There's no lead, zinc, or copper in it. So it's completely organic and healthy to breathe when you burn it, which is a big deal for me. I mean, I'm always preaching organic, and then you have a beautiful vessel left over. So I'm a two-for gal. I'm like, okay, when I pick vessels to pour in, there needs to be something beautiful for my customers to use for another purpose when they're done with the candle.
Right. So what do you recommend that they use this for? So it's a really short cup.
Well, doesn't it also almost look like a little sherbet dish or an ice cream dish?
You know?
Or you could put your keys in it. Women could put their jewelry in it.
A little ice cream dish for a person who wants a very small serving.
Right, there you go. A controllable serving, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And all of my packaging is recyclable. Even if I do use plastic, it's called biofilm, which is completely compostable and degradable. So I try as much as possible to have as close to a zero carbon footprint in my business as I can. Even with who I order my butters and oils from, their packaging needs to be compostable.
Okay.
Yeah.
So does that make it a little bit more expensive?
Yes, it does. Yeah. Yes, it does. But that's my brand. It's who I am. It's what I live out daily. And I'm kind of crunchy mom, right? That's what they call you, is a crunchy mom. I'm like, I want everything I consume to be compostable if at all possible.
Now this one obviously is...
That one's called Bali Breeze, and it looks like the ocean.
Bali Breeze, yeah.
Bali Breeze. The bottom half that looks like sand has purified fine-grained sand in it for an exfoliation experience, and the top, the blue up, is a soft, nourishing soap. So you get the scrubby portion on the bottom of the bar and the nourishing butter portion on the top of the bar.
And
so
these are made with little moles, little seashells?
I actually make each one of those seashells and hand paint them.
Really?
With the dyes, yep. A lot of work goes into that bar.
Wow.
But I love the ocean. We moved here from Long Beach area, and we were very ocean-oriented, so that's my nod to all the years raising my kids by the beach.
It must have been nice to raise kids by the beach.
It was.
I've always been, I've lived all over, but I've always been fond of Fresno area because the mountains and the beach are about the same distance from each other, you know, and you can just go and choose wherever you want to go, you know. I mean, there's a lot here, but there's not a lot of high profile, entertainment around here.
I love the pace here, though.
Yeah.
Moving from Southern California, which was a very frantic pace for over 35 years, to here. I'm originally from Battle Creek, Michigan, and this reminds me, as a community, of the Midwest. The people are kind, a little slower pace, lots of Jesus, which I love, and they remember your name. The gal in the grocery store I met the first week remembered my name moving forward, whereas the gal who had packed my grocery bags for 30 years in Long Beach never remembered my name. I'd strike up conversation, and she was nice, and I enjoyed her, but the gal who checks me out here from the first week has remembered my name and always asks questions, and I'm a people person, so I love that. And I just love the kinder, gentler approach here, and I love the people here.
And so which church are you going to in town here?
Clovis Christian Church.
Clovis Christian Church?
Up off Locan, like between Shaw and Bullard.
Did you guys pick that from close to home, or did you?
Oh, no, we drive half hour to get there.
Okay.
We're right smack dab in the middle of a lot of really big churches, and we enjoyed them. But we raised our children in a very small, intimate church that was less than 200 people at its height, and I really wanted that really intimate environment again. And the pastor, Cameron Unruh, is just preaches beautifully. He's a verse by verse, deeply in the Word. We're going through Ezekiel right now, and I'm tell you verse by verse in the chapters, and I love that kind of teaching. Our youth ministry is just exploding. So I love that. I love to see that youth ministry growth all the way from, the newborn ministry all the way through our college group, which has hundreds. So we now have 3 services on Sunday.
Nice.
So it's a growing church, but it hasn't become mega. So, it's a very intimate environment between the preaching and then the small groups and the Bible study. So I really love that.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I don't think I've been to that church.
You will have to come to a Sunday service.
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah.
I try to check out churches, you know what I mean? But I volunteer a lot at my own church,
And which is your church?
Clovis Hills.
Okay.
Yes.
Yep.
And I work on the tech team there.
That's right down the street from our house, actually.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. So, but I work on the tech team there, so I a couple of weekends a month I'm
you're
there.
consumed.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so like I
Volunteering.
it's like 1 or 2 weekends I could go somewhere else, and or I could watch online in my pajamas.
COVID started that whole thing, didn't it?
Actually existed before COVID, but
That just really enforced it, didn't it?
exactly.
We churched all Sunday during COVID, like 4 or 5 different churches. You were stuck inside. There was nothing else you could do. And I was like, wow, I get to go to church 5 times on a Sunday. But I missed the people.
Yeah.
So getting back into body was important.
Yeah, fellowship is extremely important. It's not just important for us personally when we need, people and reinforcement and reassuring and that kind of stuff, but it's important that we fellowship with others because we're all so different from each other. You know what I mean? People need to realize that, other people think differently and still love Jesus.
Yes.
And I think that's really important. So that's why I like to interact with when we have like the 21 days of prayer and those kind of things.
I love the 21 days of prayer.
Yeah, I like to interact with as many of the other churches as possible. Like I won't sit with my people from my church normally. I'll go sit with people I don't know. Strangers.
Yeah.
It's like, just so I can interact with people that that have a different. Because it's very rare that because a church has like a vibe. You know what I mean? It's like once you've been in a church a while, everybody kind of falls into that little church vibe.
Yes.
And which is nice. It's comforting, but it's kind of cool to get out of that vibe and go find another vibe and take your vibe to that vibe and see how that.
Correct. You are a people person as well. Yeah. We seek out to meet different people, and I love that's one of the things I love about my husband is he's a connector. He loves to meet specifically men and point them to another man in Christ and nurture relationships, and we both we seek that out. We're very drawn to that, and we love being a part of that. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I never really thought of myself as a people person. I thought of myself more as a social butterfly. You know what I mean?
Oh, no. The minute I met you, I knew you were a people person. I was like, there's a kindred spirit. There's a people person.
Yeah. I like people. You know what I mean? I mean, some people. Some people get on my nerves.
Well, that's the way it is always with anybody, right?
But I'm naturally a clown, so human interaction is kind of important to me because you can't make people laugh if there's nobody there.
Yeah, laughing alone isn't so much fun, is it?
Yeah, my cats don't like to laugh. So.
Very true. Oh.
Okay, so where do they see the website and what stores locally if they're local?
It's literally gardengatesoap.com.
Garden
It's that easy. Gardengatesoap.com. They can find me on.
Was that inspired at all by San Francisco?
No, actually, it's because of my love of gardening.
Okay.
Absolutely love gardening, and I grew up with a dad who gardened. I mean, literally, he was an engineer by day, a chef, and a gardener on the weekends because that just fed his soul. And he'd wander through his garden with a coffee cup in hand early in the morning, Saturdays and Sundays, just snacking, right? So that was my special time with my dad in the garden. And
see, that's another kindred thing. Is like I'm very big on gardening.
Yes, and so as he got older and then moved into retirement, the home they were in, he literally had a gated area, and he'd say, "Come into my garden gate." He would say that. And so I had great memories of gardening with my dad, food that would nurture you, right? And so my dream has always been to have a chunk of acreage and be off the grid, right? Provide my own energy, grow 100% of my own food. And I have a clear vision of what I want that gate to be when I enter it. So that you enter that space, and it's all for the Lord. And so I actually, I do online Zoom parties. Like I have a lot of women all over the U.S. who buy my soap, but they can't. Someone in Chicago can't come to my home here in Fresno. So usually during the holidays, they'll host what they call a sip and shop party. They'll grab their little mug of tea or coffee and meet me on Zoom with a bunch of friends, and I do a little PowerPoint to show them. And I start that PowerPoint with my vision of my gate. I actually have a picture that I found, and I say, "Join me beyond the garden gate," and then I share about my business. So it was very clear the Lord gave me this name for this soap because think of entering the garden with Jesus, right? And so that's where that came from. And so I'm very visual. I mean, you can tell from what I do, detail is very important to me. And I love, I always have the vision of that gate in my head. Yeah.
Well, I mean, this stuff is extremely beautiful.
Thank you.
I mean, like...
That's my cinnamon spice bar. And actually the top of that is the dried blood orange from my blood orange tree.
Oh, no, you have a blood orange tree?
I do. That's one of the trees I have.
Now, I have to ask you, are your oranges seedless on that blood orange tree?
No, blood oranges are not seedless.
Okay.
So I have blood orange, Washington, 2 different lemons, a peach, mulberry, dragon fruit. I mean, it's just, we're in a rental home right now, and I love it, but it was blank when I came. And I'm like, oh, an artist canvas. Like, I can plant, under the trees. I can put pots everywhere. So everything's in container gardening while I wait for the Lord to show me which land we're going to buy.
I can relate to that also. I like to clone roses and wisteria, so I have like a whole bunch of like crepe myrtles in buckets and roses in buckets and.
See, and I clone berries. I clone food and medicinals for tincturing and soaping, and so very kindred.
I'm more fond of flowers. So.
I do love roses. My husband just took me to the nursery today so that my son could purchase a beautiful rose for me for Mother's Day, and it's sitting on my front porch waiting to be planted.
I tried growing food for a while, but it attracted too many bugs.
Oh, okay.
So
I intermix. I interplant. All my flowers are interplanted with my vegetables.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's
and
interesting.
that helps keep away the pests from the vegetables.
Really?
Mm-hmm. I always plant marigolds and calendula in between everything, and then I'll plant like garlic chives or my green onions because the bugs hate the smell of those. So it's all interplanted everywhere.
Oh, I'll have to pick your brain on that sometime.
Yeah.
When I'm ready to because I there are some things that food-wise that I've been like putting off planting because again that experience. I mean, I went and planted a whole mess of food, and the amount of bugs that it attracted.
Well, you'll have to come to my home and learn. I love teaching people about gardening because it just passes that food skill forward that nourishes you in a very healthy way. And it's very simple. I had this lovely gal, Destiny, who I just met, young little 21-year-old. She'd never planted anything, didn't even know you could eat a mint leaf. And I had her over the other day, and I took her to the nursery, and I helped her plant her very first little 7-gallon plant bag for her front porch that was her herbs in a pot that she could plant and grow all year. And it was just lovely to see that discovery process happen. That's my dad's legacy that I pass forward, teaching people how to garden just so they have that freedom. It's very freeing to go out and pick your own lettuce and make a salad, right? Or pick your own herbs to cook with.
I got my love for raising flowers from my grandmother, and I wanted to do food because my grandfather was the one that strawberries and peanuts and.
There you go. Now see that candle right there, the Austin rose candle, is in honor of my grandmother Marguerite, who grew David Austin vintage roses, all in front of her big glass living room window, and I would have tea with her on a weekend at 4:00, looking out her window at all her roses. So all of my soaps have a story or a reason behind them, but I'm very drawn to those memories of people that are significant in my life.
All right, so I bet every one of these has a story behind it.
They do.
Okay, so let's hear the story behind the spice.
So the spice one is I love food smells, and especially at Christmas, I love clove and cinnamon and those rich Christmassy smells, and that is right around the time that the blood oranges are really ripe. And so I had all these blood oranges that were beautiful, and I dry everything in my commercial dehydrator to save as like orange chips, and I'm always giving away food. And I had some customers who I love who love those same kind of smells, and like, could you like develop a soap that we could give as like a host gift when we go to dinner at our friends' houses that has that like homey, like cinnamony smell, but they could still use it all year. And so I just got to playing and developed it and love it. And that's like one of my soaps that's all year, but it originated at Christmas time.
Okay.
And then this one is in honor of the colors that, my mom loves bright roses and bright colors and detail. And so I came up with that. Of course, the candle is my grandmother. Mm-hmm. The chamomile is my daughter has a 20-acre ranch here, and I harvest my organic chamomile from her fields by hand this time of year. And it's just the flower, literally just the flower. And that is so pure you could use it on a baby's face, which my kids needed when they were little because they just had skin issues very young. So that came out of my need as a mom to have pure product. The Bali Breeze was in honor of all of my family's snorkel trips. My mom was a teacher, and all her money was saved every year to take us somewhere across the world to go scuba diving and snorkeling, like Tahiti, Bahamas, Dutch, French West Indies, before any other white people went there. Like, they did not know how to handle little tiny towhead white blonde girls. They were fascinated with us. But, there we were on the beaches of the world where no one else had gone yet, having those great adventures in the ocean, and those are my memories with that.
Nice.
And that is my goat milk oatmeal honey bar that I developed. That was purely selfish because I know goat milk's healthy for the skin, honey's great for the skin, and oatmeal's great for the skin. And my kids had to have oatmeal baths when they were young a lot because they always got hives from food additives. So that one I designed because I love that smell myself personally, and it's very gentle on the skin.
Now, do you put these things like in packages when they go through your website? What do they?
People can they can construct their own gift box. I have a lot of people who do that. I always, for every holiday, there's always a gift box available that I design. I'll have a gift box section. A lot of people like to come to my studio and really touch, feel, smell, and then go, ooh, can you put me together a gift box that's those for this auntie, and will you mail it for me? And I do that too.
Do you slip in any Bible verses or anything
I do.
like that?
I do. I pray over every box. Every box is packed. Every order that's sent, I pray over. It's like, Lord, what do you want me to pray for this person? Even if I really don't know who they are, I'm constantly praying for them. Yeah.
That's cool. I that's one of the things about In-N-Out Burger that I like is like,
there's scriptures on their cups.
On their cups.
Yep. There's a scripture. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and I do, I have a friend named Jessica Klassen who has these beautiful boxes called the Ripple Box. Mm-hmm. And it's like a subscription box. And so it's filled with beautiful gifts from other Christian businesses in order to nurture your faith and have you nurture someone else's faith. So the point of buying that box is to purchase it and give the gifts out of it to other people to forward their faith. And so I have made half bars. I did my coconut cream bar, and the focus was joy. So, she decided what she wanted as a scripture, and then I designed the packaging, and my bar was in that box this last year, which was really fun to do. Really fun to see other women take it and gift it forward. I don't know where all those little bars landed, but I know they blessed women.
Yeah. And were they all branded?
Yes, they were all branded.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So what's next for you?
I'm working on my Instagram following. Mm-hmm. It's Garden Gate Soaps, plural. I'm learning. Learning in that front. And really, my next big push is the Man Puck. I really would like to wholesale the Man Puck into barbershops, cigar shops, because those are the type of places with men who have a discretionary income will look for luxury. My products are a luxury line. They're not your basic. They really nourish the skin and have really high-end ingredients. And then I have that purpose to support the ministry. So I really have discerning customers who really care about what they put on their skin. And I find that barbershops and cigar shops and places that carry men's products are what I'm looking to garner next, because I would like to move my Man Puck line into those stores.
Yeah, I would think that the dominant audience for that would be the wives that did not want their soaps used.
And actually the men were, the white bar there, the smooth bar, for the women it's cast so it looks like a rose or a sunflower. And the men were actually taking their wife's soap and shaving with it. And then they're like, can't she make something masculine? The wives are like, give me back my soap. So I had so much feedback that the wives were like, can't you make something that's simple and forward, but those same ingredients? And that's exactly where that came out of. Yeah, but
awesome.
Plenty of men appreciate the artistry. I have a lot of men who come shop for their wives. They'll call and say, it's Mother's Day, what do you think? You know my wife, or this is what my wife likes, can we put something together? So that's always fun to do.
Yeah, I don't have a wife, but I can relate for shopping for my mother.
There you go.
What I mean? So, yeah, she's not really like a soap person. She's more like a ornamental person. You know what I mean? So it's.
I do have ladies who won't use it. They decorate their bathrooms with it. Like, I love the smell. And I'm like, well, maybe buy 2 bars, one to use and one to look at. Because really it's so good and healthy for your skin. That's my whole message is you really need to take care of yourself. And what ends up on your skin ends up in your body. So use what's really nourishing. Even if you're not purchasing from me, buy from someone who makes handmade small batch organic soap. It's really important for your health.
It sounds like a wise move.
Yeah.
Well, we're out of time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming and sharing your soap and the business and your testimony.
Thank you.
And really, we'd like to know more and keep it updated. We will we'll share the website with our audience.
Thank you.
And we'll hopefully hear more from you guys and see how things are going.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Drew.
Well, we have a statement here that we do. We say that you're definitely rad for Christ.
I am
You're
rad
definitely
for Christ.
fired up for Jesus, and we love to see that here.
Yes. Thank you so much.
And God bless you.
God bless you.
Housekeeping time. Yes, housekeeping time is the time when I sit here and talk to you about fundraising for this show. So Radical Christianity does operate on donation from viewers like you. So if you have $5, $10, $15, $20 that you could spare and that God says that you should give to us on this show, we would really love it if you would partner with God and help us make a better show and keep everything going. Basically, all you need to do is go to our website, radforchrist.com. That's RAD, Christ.com. And there's a little donate link at the top. Just go there and click the donate link, and it takes you to the Mr. E Christian Media donation page. And from there, you can just select a drop-down, pick Radical Christianity from the drop-down list of projects that Mr. E Christian Media has, and we will be able to collect the funds that you set aside for us. This is not an expectation. You don't have to donate money to watch the show, right? But if you have it and you're able to share it with God, it would be very useful, and we would be very grateful. But if you don't have the money, it's okay. You can still share the show on social media. You can tell a friend. You can make your sister sit down and watch it with you. Letting people know about the show does help. And if you do that, or you can't do that for some reason, what you can do is you can pray. You can pray for the show. You can pray for me. You can pray for our tech team. You can pray for our guests. Prayer is very powerful, and it is always needed. So we really appreciate you. And please, if you have any questions, go ahead and reach out to us. Leave a comment on social media, whatever it takes. We would love to know your thoughts. So with all that said, on with the show. This next guy, he's got an interesting testimony and a really huge heart for Jesus. So let's have a huge warm welcome for David Barrios. Hey, welcome. Thank you. Have a seat. David.
Hey,
Welcome to Radical Christianity.
thanks. I'm kind of not nervous, but I guess I feel unprepared since, I don't know what you're going to ask, but I think that's awesome. So we'll just let the Spirit lead, right?
Yeah. Okay, so what we normally do is we go from testimony to mission, right?
Okay.
So whatever that ends up being for you. So please let us know how you met Jesus.
I met Jesus actually, I guess, from a Jehovah's Witness coming into my house when I was 13. So I was raised Catholic, but Jehovah's Witness came, I did the sinner's prayer, and my mom reminds me that I woke up that morning, had a dream, and I said, Mom, I said I love Jesus in my mouth yesterday, but now I said it in my heart in the morning, and so I was all excited about that. I had a dream Jesus walking by my house.
Nice.
So that's kind of how I started.
Yeah. So how did that progress through life? Did
I was radically set out for Jesus, and then I hit 9th grade. It was the worst year of my life. I went to a private school, thought that it was going to be the answer. Everybody's going to love Jesus, and I ended up getting bullied and ridiculed, and so I hit 10th grade. Like, I'm done. I kind of closed my mouth, and I'm like, I just want to fit in. Like most high schoolers just want to fit in, and I just kind of lived what I would say the very typical high school and college life. And then after being, what do they say, sick and tired of being sick and tired, I just felt like, okay, God, I really need to do this your way. And from an early age, this is part of my testimony, I always struggled with pornography. And I remember when I got married finally, I still kind of brought that into my marriage. She was aware of it, and just really trying to, like, God help me, God help me. So as we were married, I was in recovery groups and tried to get that monkey off my back, if you would. Went through a divorce, and then I'm like, okay, I'm going to be in recovery groups. We tried for 2 years before the divorce of trying to fix the marriage. And all that to say that it didn't work. So I'm in church, I'm hurt, I'm mad at God, and eventually I started, I've always played drums on the worship team, helped run sound, and I just started doing that again, kind of living what I would call ambivalent slash, just not really living for Jesus. I say, are you in church or are you in Christ? Well, I was one of those, apathetic Christians that was just in church. And so I kind of had learned that for years. I became an expert at it. I'm going to look at porn. I'm going to have sex outside of marriage. I'm still going to go to church. And I do love Jesus. But at a certain point, you can't get too far. And so I think God's given me this radical grace because after my divorce, I got into another relationship just like I would in high school or college. And literally for 6 years, I didn't pick up my Bible. It's like literally just sitting there. And then on June 7th, 8th of 2017, he healed me. And that's when, I don't know, I believe in the gifts of the Spirit, and I believe that God speaks to us. So in 1999, he started talking to me. When I was going through my divorce, he started talking to me, and I kind of wrote down some things. But that summer of 2017, man, it was just like, bam, just a whole bunch of things. And I just felt like he healed me. And so instead of running back to another girlfriend or back to pornography or strip clubs, literally he just tore me in a million pieces. And I just feel like he put this hedge of protection around me for a couple of years. So that was 7 years ago. And so I started to like, okay, Lord, I love you so much. What am I going to do? I've been an apathetic Christian. I didn't know the word. I remember, I think it's Isaiah 145:18, where it says he's given us our food in due season. And so I feel like in a way he kind of closed the scriptures in my heart. And that year he just completely opened all the scriptures. And so I'm studying the Bible, I'm reading the Bible, I'm getting kind of new friends. And God starts just downloading all these promises, many promises which he gives all of us, but then very specific promises to me, which I think, you hear people say, oh yeah, God speaks to other people, he speaks to the Bible. But he's an intimate God. He wants to speak to us about our situation. And I feel like I even still, to this day, I think sometimes doubt, like, God, why are you being so specific? Like, I don't even want to, sometimes I even like, God, I don't want to hear any more specifics because then it makes me be more hopeful. And I think he builds our faith by doing these kinds of things. And so it's been a very, I'll just say it's been a long 7 years, because I've seen some things that have come to fruition and other things that I thought were really going to happen that didn't. So I'm talking a lot, so you're not asking me any questions. So
well, you're doing good talking. It's funny because I've had interviews where I've like just said hi to the guy, and then we like went the whole interview with him just talking. In fact, that happened just last week. It's not that common, but it does happen. So that was a testimony. God stepped in and threw up some hedges, made some, obviously radical movements in your life on that one. How did that turn out?
So when I started getting some words, I always, so I'll tell people, like, I know Charles Stanley likes to talk about how, learning how to hear the voice of God, right? That's a very important thing. And so to me, I can think of in 1999, the first time I kind of felt his voice talking to me. And then literally there's this pause of 7 years where I don't hear him saying anything. And then he finally says, my presence is anywhere, and my presence is everywhere. Well, I'm in a Catholic church, I was with some buddies in LA, and it was just kind of a weird thing. But that was his introduction back to, we're going to start talking again. And so I feel like there's, and again, I'll just say, some people say, oh, you're hearing an audible voice. And I'm like, no, I feel like you get so quiet like Elijah in the cave. He didn't come in an earthquake. He didn't come in the fire. He came with a whisper. He's got to be close. You've got to be detached from stuff, detached from media, detached from. And again, I'm not going to say you have to, but when you are detached from all that stuff, it just allows more of a place for God to actually start talking to you. And I think when you're hurt and broken and prostrate, and you have nothing else to turn to, that's again where he's like, I'm going to be close to the brokenhearted, which is another promise that he gives to us. It's like, I'm close to the brokenhearted. And if you seek with me with all your heart, you'll find me. And so I get emotional about it because it's like this intimacy that you get by telling everything else in the world. It's not that you don't care, but it's like that parable of the farmer and the great pearl. Like everything else he sold for that. So I started this, I felt like God told me to, this is an impression, like on Easter, go to the United States, hit all 48 states, and tell your testimony of what I've done for you. And so I did. And at first I thought, wow, that's kind of random. 48 states, 4 months. Oh, and go take your client's trailer. And so I talked to my ex-wife, I talked to my children, I talked to my pastor, and I'm like, finally, I just said, God, I'm going to do this. You're going to have to stop me. And I remember feeling like I'm going to have to get in a car accident or something's going to happen because I'm doing this. And he finally gave me confirmation, like, go. And because I didn't really feel like that was his word, but I think that was his way of prompting us. So I call it an impression. So I went and, I took a trailer and I'm very detailed. I'm like, okay, 1.5 days per state, and that's going to cover it, or 2.5 days, whatever that it was. And so I went for 4 months. I thought God was going to pay it. He didn't. He kind of did in some ways, but I really felt like, okay, God, I'm going to do this on faith, and you're going to pay for it. And he really didn't. And there's all kinds of crazy things that happen, and I love talking about it. So I started this YouTube channel called Everlasting Freedom. And the two Bible verses that I based it on is Isaiah 49:2, which says that he's made my mouth a sharpened sword, and he's held me under his arm and in his quiver. And 2 Peter 1:4, where it says that he's given us great promises, so that through them we may participate in the divine nature, having escaped the corruption of the world. So I feel like, in a way, how many men out there struggle with pornography or, cheated on their wives, go to strip clubs, in the church, out of the church, believed or not believed. And it's just like anything else. It just holds you, and it inhibits you from being a real vessel in the kingdom. And so when I see a man that's struggling with that, or I sense that, I just I want to give him grace. I want to I struggled with it pretty much my whole life. And I remember when I was traveling around, some men would say, well, don't you ever have a problem looking at women, or do you ever struggle with that? And I'm just like, yeah, I still can see a woman, but it's like take every thought captive and make it obedient in Christ. And you have to have your offensive plan. So, taking an iPad or an iPhone, and some men are like, oh, I can't even have that because they struggle with it, or I need to have covenant eyes, So I really feel like all those years that I was in recovery trying to fix this problem, I'm trying to fix this problem, or 12-step, or this or that, it's almost like, no, the Holy Spirit might have a time when he's going to fix it for you and change that for you. And so I did that. I came back, and for a while there, I've owned my own business. God, that was one of the promises that God gave me 4 years before I got it. It was like, you're going to have a business. And I really, to this day, believe that that's actually the longest thing I've had on this earth. I've had my business. In August, it'll be 20 years. And I just have so much peace about that part of it. But I remember when I took off for 4 months, I came back and I'm like, okay, God, I'm done. I'm going to be a pastor. I'm going to travel. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I remember my pastor asking me in front of my children, We were there barely in high school, and so was it worth it? What did God show you? Was it worth it? And my answer was, I don't know yet. And my kids were mad at me. And I think actually some of my friends were kind of like, what did all that do? You did all that, and then it's like, what's the price that you pay? And it pays in the kingdom. That's what it does. And so you come back and you're like, okay, I'm going to have a church, or God's going to bless my business, or he's going to put all these things that he's promised me. But
yeah, God's not transactional. So.
He's not. He's relational. And so you have to just know that he's got a plan. And sometimes you don't get to see that. So I'm still like, okay, Lord, how do I really struggle with performance. Like if I do enough interviews, or if I travel a country, I feel like, okay, I'm going to earn my blessings, or I'm going to earn your goodness, or, I already know it's like Christ enough is crucified. Christ crucified has got to be enough. But I've just got all these little facets and things, and I've written down all these paragraphs and dreams that God's given me over the last 7 years. And I have some ideas of what I'm supposed to do with that. And then sometimes I just feel like I drop it and I get distracted. And I don't, and sometimes I just don't know. And I'm like, okay, God, help me to know what I'm supposed to do today. And so when I get a phone call like, hey, you want to come interview? It reminds me like, hey, there's still things you can do. So I started interviewing pastors last year, and I stopped doing that. I kind of feel like I still am supposed to do that. Last year, I went to Chile and Rio de Janeiro. I lead an e-group from Elevation Church on Thursday nights. I love Elevation Church, and when I traveled, I met some people there, and I got involved, and I play on the worship team on a couple different churches. When I did travel, I was able to talk, I think, 24 times, and I recorded some of it. Some of it's on my YouTube channel. Half of it is still on my computer, incomplete, and so I don't know. I'm talking again a lot, and
so what's your YouTube channel?
It's called Everlasting Freedom. Okay. And part of the reason why I started it is because I remember when I was broken in a million pieces, and used to medicating myself through pornography or all those other bad things that I had learned since I was a little kid. I tell people I was, addicted to pornography before I was even a Christian. And no one ever wants to say that. I remember when I was on my journey, my dad, who was still alive, he's calls me, and I feel like the Spirit had prompted him to call me, and he's like, do you remember why you're going, what you went for? And I'm thinking, why is he asking me that, right? And that was the one state, I think it was Mississippi, where a pastor's like, you need to go to this building, and it was basically the last building where it had abortions that were allowed. And so I went there, and I really felt like my dad's call was reminding me that when I was 22, I got my girlfriend pregnant, and she's like, Dave, I'm going to get an abortion. What do you think I should do? And I was just kind of like, and so that's part of the testimony that I hate to admit, but that's part of my testimony. And so I remember including that on the second half of my journey, on those 48 states, is like, even though women, I'm sure, go through all the struggle and emotional, feelings, as men, how many times has men allowed abortions to happen when they could have stepped up and said, no, I'm not going to let that happen?
I honestly don't know the answer to that. I have a lot of friends who found out about the abortion after it happened. Mm-hmm. Very rarely do I do know some guys that were like all, you better get an abortion kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
But, like I would say out of most of the ones that I'm aware of, the guys found out after the fact. Yeah.
And I think, and again, I remember her saying, my mom's in town, we're going to go do this unless you have something to say. And it was almost like I wasn't telling her to. But see, as men, and the reason why my dad, I think, made the phone call is because I remember it. It's just like one of those things in your life, right? My dad had a heart attack that weekend, and he was out of town in another state. And I remember literally asking God, like, God, if my dad lives, I don't want the baby. But if my dad dies, I want the baby. And I thought, how crazy was my mindset to think that, right? My dad lived. He lived for another 15, 18 years, whatever. He passed away 2 years ago. But I just remember, like, how can we be that way, right? How can, and it's because we're so far away from Christ that we don't understand, you know. And so my 2 children are adopted, and I know that God's forgiven me for that, right? But he's a just God. And I remember feeling like, okay, God, you know, I never had my own child, but you've given me 2 beautiful children. But my ex-wife and I, we lost 2 children, just naturally trying to have children. We just wasn't in the cards for us. And so, you know, our decisions and the consequences of our decisions sometimes are like, well, yeah, God's going to forgive us. Bodhi Bachman, I think that's his name. I always get his name wrong, but he talks about, you know, being broken. And one of his sermons that he talks about is like, you know, God will forgive you, but can you forgive yourself? You know, and so it's like that can take sometimes people a lot of time. That it's like, okay, I know God forgave me for this, and I don't want to say that I don't have a child only because of that. There's lots of reasons. Maybe God will still give me a child, right? Never know. I'm a little old, so I don't know if that would ever happen. But you just don't know what God's going to do. But I feel like when we're broken, God can work more. And he can say, like, you know, if we were to touch a fire and it didn't burn us, then we would always touch fire. So I feel like when something happens in our life and it doesn't affect us and it doesn't hurt us, it's not going to prompt us to, like, I don't want to do that again. I don't want to be in that position again. I don't ever want to go through a divorce again. Yeah. You know, I don't want my children to deal with all the stuff that I brought into the house.
Yeah, that you know, I can understand that. That makes a lot of sense. So how old are your kids?
20 and 22.
20 and 22.
Yeah.
So they're in the fun years.
They're in the fun years. I'm an empty nester. You know, I never got married again. I really feel like that's something that God does have for me in my future. You know, and you know, I'm friends with my ex-wife. She remarried, and I know some people are like, you know, oh, you know, that whole, all those questions that you ask, like, okay, well, can I remarry? You know, is there life again after a divorce? Does God allow, you know, God hates divorce, but he allowed it. You know, and I'll say this to anybody that's like, I think through my divorce and through all that pain of being away from God has allowed me to be closer to God. And so, you know, I'm thinking, would I rather be married to my first wife and go to hell, knocking on the door saying, hey, you know, the parable of the 10 virgins are my favorite parable. And I'm thinking, you know, I knew God was coming. I knew at one point I was living for God, but I got sleepy. I ran out of the oil, which I feel is the Holy Spirit. So, you know, I would rather be divorced. I'd rather go through all of the things I've gone through, you know, in the last, I'll just say 15, 16 years since my divorce. 7 of it, which was my own lifestyle, my own doing, and now the last 7 years have been like, okay, God, it's how best can I represent you? Obviously, you know, not always doing that perfectly, but having the mindset and again the knowledge of what God's, or I should say, the wisdom. Everything comes from God, including the wisdom that we have, the health that we have, the business that we have, all of those things. Again, with my own business, I don't know how it's still going. You know, and during COVID, I took a couple of jobs. Things were kind of really rough during that time. I still have my business, and it's still going. It's just, you know, it's crazy how God does that, because it's his promise. It was his promise to me.
That's good. Yeah. You know, the thing about divorce is a lot of people mix message it. You know what I mean? Like, because, you know, there's different parts of the Bible that'll address things differently. Mm-hmm. You know, like there's parts of the Bible that'll say that, you know, if someone gets divorced other than, you know, infidelity, then, you know what I mean, then they're committing adultery, you know, to get remarried. And then there's the parts of the Bible that say, you know, it's like in Proverbs, it's, you know, several times in Proverbs, it's, you know, better to sit on the roof of your house
than be married to a contentious woman. Or yeah. You know, and I remember when I used to tell my testimony, there's some privacy things that you would think about, right? And I remember telling my children, and, you know, because it is on YouTube and people can look it up, and Like the last girlfriend I had, I remember, she was surprised, and you can get to know a lot about me just by that. But I just feel like if I don't tell the story, then no one else gets to get the benefit of what I went through, right? And so, could it be offensive to my children? We have such a good relationship now. I can't say they're perfect. I'm not perfect, but they're not bothered by it, I just, know sometimes we just have to wait on what God's going to do and how is He glorified through it. And so, as humans, we don't always see that, right? And so, I feel like in heaven, like I remember baptizing my dad. My dad was in the hospital and he's in a wheelchair, and my mom for years and years and years trying to get him baptized, and I saw in Elevation Church that they baptized the person with putting water just on their forehead while they're in the hospital bed. So my dad just told me that one time, and I said, "You ready to get baptized?" He goes, "Yeah, will you baptize me?" And I'm like, "Heck yeah, I am." And I saw that, and I'm like, "Lord, I did it." My mom was out of town; she was kind of bummed, but I remember my dad saying, "Well, I didn't really feel anything." And I said, "Dad," I said, do you want to get fully immersed in a river or go to a lake or go, about a bathtub?" And he's like, "No." I said, "Okay." I said, "But it's not so much that you didn't feel anything." I said, "But up in heaven, there's a bunch of people saying, 'Heck yeah.'"
Mm-hmm. That's the feeling something during a baptism is. Some people make these claims. Oh, I feel like I'm completely renewed, and you know what I mean. But that's not what baptism is about. You know what I mean?
It's a step of obedience.
Yeah, it's a step of obedience. It's a public proclamation.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean, of your faith and who you are and what you stand for.
Yeah, I'll just say this because you're mentioning it. But when I was baptized on my birthday, like I think a year or two after I had been married, and I was still struggling with pornography. And I remember the person that baptized me. His name was John. He's a good friend of mine, and he's like, do you want to pray about something? I said, yeah, this pornography thing that's just like still in my heart and everything else like that. So he prayed for me. We went down. I came up. I just made this gigantic, huge, like animalistic roar or yelp or something. And I really felt like that was a cleansing, which again, I don't mean to super make it anything other than I think it was just a lot of junk that came out of me. I still struggle with it after. I wasn't healed at that time, but I really felt like the call of ministry might have started at that time, where I started feeling the call of, okay, how do I do that? I think I had another point about that, I'm forgetting what I was going to say. There was a second thing that happened there with the baptism, but in any case, it's a step of obedience, and I think like anything else, sometimes. What can we do to be obedient? Another analogy, I don't know how much time we have, but another analogy, I remember someone saying, what's the minimum I have to do to be married? Put a ring on a finger, promise you that I'm going to love you forever, and then that's it. Show up come home every day. So I think God looks at that in a way the same thing. Like, are you really, what's the minimum I'm going to do to be a Christian? I'm going to say the sinner's prayer. I'm going to go to church for an hour or two on a Sunday, and I'm good. Isn't that enough to be a Christian?
Well, again, there's a lot of opinion on that one.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's enough to be saved, but, someone who's a Christian is more than just a believer, right? They're like Christ. You know what I mean? You are of Christ if you're a Christian. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think the point that someone else did this, so I'm stealing it from somebody, but it's like, are you in relationship? I mean, what kind of marriage would really sustain that kind of attitude? Like, I gave you a ring, I told you a promise 10 years ago. It's like, no, I want to die for you, I want to serve you, I want to make you feel important, I want to get to know you, I want to know how you tick, what makes you happy, what makes you sad, right? And so to me, I feel like that's the way I am, with God. I like God. I want to know why, and sometimes it's like God will say, "Well, it's not for you to know, right?" But I feel like that's just my personality. Is like I want to know the things of God. I want to know why he does it this way or that way. And I think after ignoring the Bible for so many years, all I wanted is like, oh yeah, with this person or with this parable, with this king, God did it this way, and does that mean he's going to do it in your life? Maybe, maybe not, don't know. But it's like,
Hope it isn't like the Israelites.
yeah.
40 years in the wilderness.
Well, yeah, and I think when we look at it, we should be studying the history. We should be looking at that. And so when God gives you a word, I think that's the other thing, right? When God gives you a word, like one of the words that he gave me, and I usually leave this one out all the time, or I bring it up, is like, you're going to create havoc in people's lives. And when I heard that, I'm thinking, that doesn't sound like something God would say. And he's like, for your good and their good. And when I look up creating havoc, it's like to inflict pain on the enemy. So if I feel like I'm introduced to some person and God's telling me that I'm going to wreak havoc in their lives, I'm thinking, well, then it goes back to that Bible verse where God says, where Jesus talks about, I don't bring a thing of peace, but a sword to divide family from mother and father-in-law. And it's like, what is that doing? I mean, in a way, I think that's how Jesus does create havoc, because he's questioning our motives and our heart. And who else is going to question that more so than the people that are closest to us?
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty accurate. I mean, usually, I would say that there's a twofold there. Sometimes people that you're closest to will see the change in you, and that could influence a change in them. But then there's also the people that you're closest to that remembered you before your change, and they're like, oh no, this is an act.
Or it's going to come around,
right,
and you're just going to be the same way. And I think, of course, the enemy wants to tell us that, or through our friends, right? We'll say that, or through our people that are the closest to us that can hurt us the most, And I think when God gives us a promise, you bet that someone else is going to try to void that promise in your mind. Like, God says you're this, but then someone might say, well, you're this. And what is it? Let every man be a liar and you be true, right?
Yeah, I mean, if anytime that God has you doing something that's going to be beneficial to the kingdom, the enemy's going to come at you. So
yeah,
I have seen that way too many times to doubt it.
Yeah, and it's like, don't be surprised, right? Don't be surprised when that happens. And that's like, again, should we be, equipping each other, helping each other, interceding? I love that, Christ prayed for us. He interceded for us. And,
yep.
Our high priest is praying for us. And so all the more, I think, again, if we get to know each other, or get to know the person that God's put in front of us, there might be a kingdom reason for it, or it might be a spiritual reason why that person is in your life.
I would say that every time, even the people that aren't Christian, there's always a purpose that I have found over time. It's easy to give God slack and just be like, oh, well, maybe God does that, But God's in the details, in all the details. God knows everything that was going to happen in everyone's life before they were even a possible thought, So, people, a lot of people don't like the whole, we have free will because we can make our own choices.
Right.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that we can operate outside of God's will.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And a lot of people, when I say that, it's impossible to exist outside God's will, people are like, oh, well, there's, I'm like,
the whole free will thing, sovereign will.
I mean, it's like, whatever choices you were going to make, God knew before you made them.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And he still chose to design you the way he designed you. So, you have free will, but you're still operating within God's will, even if you're following him or not. You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
And that's, a lot of people have trouble with that. You know what I mean? Because it's like, oh well, my mother died of this horrible disease. It's like God's will. It's like, how is that God's will? I'm like, everything's God's will.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's like, did you thank God for taking your mom home to him? Mm-hmm. And healing her in heaven? Did you thank him for that? No, you didn't, did you? You know what I mean?
Right.
That kind of stuff. And it's like, people don't like radical Christianity. They don't,
No.
they prefer the safe Christianity. You know what I mean?
There's all kinds of books about it where we just have, watered down those things. And when we, what does someone say? It's like, we'll go to the cross, but we don't ever want to get on the cross. Not that we need to be crucified again, but again, it's like getting on the cross is like, hey, I'm going to bear my own cross. I'm going to take my cross daily and die. He that tries to save his life will lose it, and who loses his life. So
My life verse, I wear this to remind me. It's Matthew 16:24. If you want to be his disciple, then you have to deny yourself, pick up your cross,
and
follow me.
And follow me.
Mm-hmm.
Not your YouTube channel or your friends or your church or your children. God again asking, hey, your brother and your mom are outside. He's like, who are my family?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so all those things are radical things that, as I think a lot of us, again, me growing up as an apathetic Christian, it's like, oh yeah, I know all those choices, and you feel like, well, God's going to forgive me. I can do this, and God will still forgive me, and He'll look past that because He loves me so much. He loves me so much, right? But yet,
yeah. See, the thing that I try to console people with is that there's a difference between being saved and being on fire for Jesus. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's like you can be saved and and truly believe, right? And I'm not going to try and define the Bible, but there's a difference between accepting God, knowing God, loving God. You know what I mean? Even if you're just a Sunday only,
right?
Believer.
How about suffering for God? What if you're one of those?
Suffering for God. If you're going to pursue God, you're going to suffer for God.
I agree.
I don't see if somebody's claiming to be a man of faith and you don't see him suffering for God, you have to kind of wonder. It's like, okay, well, where is your heart really if there's no suffering? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just because if you're, it's like the analogy, the devil isn't going to go onto a battlefield and shoot a wounded soldier dead. I mean, who's already dead? He's not going to go shoot a dead body.
Right.
You know what I mean? So if you're dead, to the battle, he's going to leave you alone.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're active and you're a threat, he's targeting you.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you're not being targeted, you're not a threat.
Yeah.
Anyway, we are out of time.
Okay.
It's been great talking to you,
Yeah,
David.
Drew. I appreciate you inviting me over. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for coming, man. And we have a saying here, you're definitely rad for Christ.
All
You're
right.
definitely fired up for Jesus, and we love to see that here, man. God bless you.
Thanks so much, man. I appreciate it.
All right, cool.
God bless you too.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for another episode of Radical Christianity. I am so pleased that you found the time to come and sit with us today. I really hope that you got something from the guests that we had today, and I hope that you visit Garden Gate Soap and check out their product line. I really kind of want to reach that one person right now who's kind of feeling Jesus tug on their heart. I want to encourage you to pay attention to that. And if you feel it's time, then you should just jump in. No one's ever regretted their decision to follow Jesus. And if you're wondering, like, how do I make this thing happen, right? You just talk to Jesus. You just say, Jesus, I need you. Please come into my life. Turn me into the person that you designed me to be. I want to lay down my way, take up your way. Forgive me of my sin and help me be the person that you've always wanted me to be. And I'm going to tell you, you're going to find some joy, you're going to find some peace, you're going to find great blessings in a life, spent serving Christ. So if you decided to take on that today, and whether you did that while watching us live or on a rerun of the show, I would really love it if you would let us know. Come into our website, radforchrist.com. That's RAD, the number 4, Christ.com. And there's a form there saying Got Saved. If you could just fill out that form, then I will have the ability to send you a Bible and a little gift to show you that we are so glad that you've joined us and welcome you to the family of God. Also on the website, there's a form for asking a question. So if you want to know something about the Bible, this show, something like that, please feel free to ask a question. I would love to get in touch with you. And also we have a prayer request form. So if you have something that you would like us to pray for, we'd be very happy to pray for you, because we are here to serve. And this is the most important part of all. And that is Jesus Christ loves you. And so do I. So, thank you for joining us this week on Radical Christianity, and we will see you next week.
And I'm not giving up. I'm not giving up, no, not me. Even if nobody else believes, I'm not going down that easily. So don't give up on me.